I'm Eric Anderson. Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, San Diego braces for continuing high fire danger as fire officials release their official report on one of the May wildfires.
And Mayor Kevin Faulconer joins us with an update on government transparency and other city business. Then, a university in San Diego is the first in the country to offer human trafficking survivors a college scholarship. I'm Peggy Pico with those conversations just ahead.
And we'll take a look at a controversial project called Death for Food, where people learn how to slaughter animals. Organizers say they're trying to teach lessons about making meat. KPBS Evening Edition starts now. Good evening and thanks for joining us. Dwayne Brown is off this week. National Weather Service issues a red flag warning for inland San Diego because of a late season Santa Ana wind condition. KPBS reporter Matt Bowler says a new report by the San Diego Fire Department both praises and criticizes how last May's Bernardo fire was fought.
Hot, dry, windy weather increased fire danger for San Diego County's inland valleys. CAL FIRE's Kendall Borteaser says year-round fire season is the new normal.
They understand that we live with this threat of wildfire year-round here in San Diego County. We can't get out of fire season. We rolled fire season 2013 right into fire season 2014, and if it continues to be the same, we're going to roll it right into fire season 2015.
Both San Diego Fire and CAL FIRE said that their ability to cope with this dry weather is because of their level of cooperation. San Diego Fire Chief Javier Maynard says last May's Bernardo fire is a good example of that cooperation at work. Maynard says his department did a great job, but the department also says there are 90 things they can do better.
But the 90 recommendations we came up when we looked at our May performance kind of take back to some things we thought we'd fixed in 07 and 03 and we haven't quite ingrained in the culture, and some new things that are kind of bedeviling us a little bit.
It ranges from making sure there are enough personal hygiene kits to getting a third chopper. Matt Bowler, KPBS News.
In what was supposed to be the first day of a trial, a murder suspect changed his plea. Armando Perez pleaded guilty to killing his wife at San Diego City College. 19-year-old Deanna Gonzalez was killed in 2010. Perez faces a possible 25 years to life in prison when he's sentenced in January. Police at San Diego State University are investigating another sexual assault on campus over the weekend. They're also looking into a report of fraternity members harassing students during a weekend march to raise awareness about the problem. The students were reportedly marching along Fraternity Row on Hardy Avenue in a Take Back the Night event. They say eggs were thrown at them, and men at two fraternity houses shouted obscenities. They also say some men at Delta Sigma Phi House waved sex toys at them.
So I've been to about 3 demonstrations before and organized 2, and this is the first time where I've ever actually felt scared.
Leaders at the accused fraternities say they don't know of any specific brothers who engaged in that behavior, but they are looking into the incident. Students skipped classes today to protest tuition hikes for the University of California system. At UC San Diego, they held a sit-in. There were also rallies at other UC campuses. Last week, UC Regents voted to raise tuition 5% every year for the next 5 years, unless the state gives the schools more money. The state has proposed a 4% increase in funding for the UC system over the next 2 years, but the school says that's not enough. A state appeals court says a transportation plan for the San Diego region does not comply with California laws to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. KPBS editor Allison St. John joins us now from our North County Bureau. Allison, what exactly did the appeals court say?
Well, as you know, Eric, the state has set some very ambitious goals for its greenhouse gas emissions to reduce them to 1990 levels by the year 2020. And in fact, Governor Schwarzenegger, when he was the governor, increased those goals to 2050. So what the court said today is that our regional planning agency, the Regional Transportation Planning Agency, has not really succeeded in revealing the environmental impacts of its regional transportation plan, expanding freeways and roads and rail and that kind of thing, and that they also have not considered mitigating any of those environmental impacts enough, and that they haven't considered the alternatives to their plan. The plaintiffs, which by the way include California State Attorney General Kamala Harris, say that it's possible that this plan could exceed the goals by 700% by 2050.
So what's going to happen now?
Well, it's possible that SANDAG, the Regional Transportation Agency, the planning agency, could appeal this to the state Supreme Court. And this is a pretty seminal, possibly precedent-setting case, so that could be the case. Recently, we heard Executive Director Gary Gallegos say he's not planning on reducing any of the funding, the hard-fought funding for the road projects that are already planned. But opponents are saying that really this is just a short-term goal to reduce gridlock and that this will not, in fact, achieve the long-term goals of reducing carbon monoxide.
KPBS editor Allison St. John. Thanks, Allison. The Mexican consulate in San Diego is promising to reach out to immigrants who may be eligible for relief under President Barack Obama's immigration reforms. The president issued executive orders last week that allow immigrants who've lived here for some time, have a clean criminal record, and have U.S. citizen children to be protected from deportation. The new orders limiting deportation also allow qualified people to get work permits. Remedios Gomez Arnau is the Mexican Consul General in San Diego. She says there are a lot of questions, and the consulate wants to help with answers.
We will be organizing workshops once we have the information of exactly what is required. We will be printing booklets. We will be, of course, working through our network of social organizations to provide these workshops in the different parts of San Diego County.
One major concern is scammers trying to take advantage of the confusion. San Diego City Council member David Alvarez says people are already reaching out to his office with questions. He says there are no answers yet because the process for being included under the plan hasn't been determined.
I've already started to see that there are folks that are announcing, we can help you apply, we can help you fill out the application, pay us a fee, and we'll take you through the paperwork. And I'm really concerned about that, that people are being duped into this idea that a process exists, that there is an application.
The Public Policy Institute of California says there are about 180,000 immigrants without the proper paperwork in San Diego County. It is not clear how many of them are eligible for relief under the new rules. San Diego Mayor Kevin Faulconer joins Peggy Pico now for his monthly update on the business of the city.
Mayor Faulconer, good to see you again.
It's great to be back.
Now, San Diego's 5-year financial outlook shows a projected surplus of close to $3 million for the next fiscal year and more than $58 million in surplus projected for the general fund. Where does this expected surplus money come from?
Well, it's a combination of things. Obviously, it's good news. We're out of the recession that we've had to deal with in not only San Diego but cities across the country. It's growing revenue, sales tax, property tax, TOT tax. That's why a healthy economy is so important to healthy neighborhoods. And it's my job and my commitment that said 50% of all those new revenues, 50% as a minimum, we're going to reinvest them right back into neighborhood services, street repair, all of the other things that the city was not doing a very good job of when it comes to infrastructure.
And that was my next question, the priority for spending this money. So infrastructure.
Infrastructure. When we look at making sure that we're spending, those monies wisely, which I'm spending a lot of time on, to make sure that it goes right back into neighborhoods where that money should be spent, where San Diegans, expect and deserve that it's spent. A lot of work on street repair, a lot of work on, city facilities and others. We're long overdue for that type of commitment, but it's working.
And I know another area that we've been talking about is money, as far as spending city money, is the city-funded report that recently found that San Diego police officers are among the least paid in the state. No surprise here. However, Prop B actually restricts how you give raises out, basically, correct?
Yeah,
so how are you going to handle the retention problem with them?
We're going to pay our officers more, and that's, I can't put it any more simply. And in fact, what I've said is, making sure that we're holding true to Proposition B, which had a 5-year pensionable pay freeze, which will save our city $1 billion. And working very closely with our Police Officers Association, which we're at the negotiating table now. We have to make sure that we're competitive, that we're not only attracting the best and brightest men and women to join our police department, but once they're here, that we keep them here. And that's my commitment, to make sure that we are competitive. We provide incentives. We're looking at a variety of different things when it comes to compensation.
Would that money come from the budget then? Because it can't come from the fund?
It'll come from the budget, absolutely, as we're looking to making sure that we keep the best and the brightest right here in San Diego where they belong.
All right, and sorry to jump back on you, but I wanted to say that as far as the deferred maintenance on city streets and things like that, I wanted to get back to that. Estimated cost of $2 billion, but the city budget analyst suggested raising sales tax in order to help pay for that. Is that something you might also consider?
What I'm working on right now is to make sure that the money that San Diegans are already sending to City Hall is being spent wisely. In fact, just this morning I had a meeting with some of the folks in our contracting department, because I'm not convinced that we're doing a very good job on oversight and making sure we're being efficient. Part of my commitment is, I said, 50% of all new revenues that comes to the city goes for neighborhood infrastructure. Looks like we'll be back into the bond market here shortly on infrastructure bonds, which I support and the council supported. $120 million a year for the next 5 years. That's a big part of it. But one of the things that I've said very clearly, that's why we're doing some of these assessments, is we have to know the scope and scale of the project. And San Diegans have to know that the money that's being spent on those is actually being spent wisely. That's why I'm spending a whole lot of time on structural reforms inside City Hall. So
before you would actually support or deny sales tax increase?
Yeah, and we have a lot of work to do to make sure that we're paving those streets the right way. We're doing it in a quality manner, and it's not taking too long to get it done.
Now, during the mayoral campaign, you pledged to restore trust and integrity in City Hall by having a transparent government. There was supposed to be an independent audit of the city's public records and permit process. Where does that audit process stand now, and where does it stand as far as transparency and your program for that?
Transparency is very important. In fact, we're spending a whole lot of time on open data, making sure we're putting more and more of the city's information online, so San Diegans can access it, so you don't have to try to hunt to different places to try to find it. Hired a new technology officer just to make sure that we're doing that. And the auditor comes out with his work plan every year. That is one of the items that I hope that we do have that audit, because I think it is important. All of these things work together, just like we were talking about, to make sure that the data is out there. People are confident that the city is doing the right thing, and all of those numbers are up front for the public to see.
So the new data officer, we could expect to hear from him more, the audit, soon?
Yeah, and it's great on the open data, because there's so much information that is out there, but it needs to be available for the public to access in formats that they can access. San Diego's behind the curve when it comes to that. I want to make sure that we are actually a nationwide leader on open data, and we will be.
All right, Mayor Kevin Faulconer, thank you so much.
Great to see you. Thank you.
As people buy their Thanksgiving turkeys, few are going to consider where those turkeys came from, how the bird was killed, plucked, and packaged. But a local group is trying to change that. Death for Food hopes to connect meat eaters to the process of how meat gets made. KPBS culture reporter Angela Carone and video journalist Katie Shuloff visited a Death for Food event where people learned how to harvest their own meat. And we want to warn you, there are some graphic images in this video.
Chicken parade!
10-year-old Calvin Berkeley is used to hanging out with chickens. He has 5 of them at home.
We have Iron Man, Roadrunner, Blackie. Yeah, those are some of the names.
But on this fall afternoon at Susie's farm in South San Diego, he won't be playing with the chickens. He's here with his dad, and he's going to learn how to slaughter one for food.
I think we'll skip the head, Jamie.
I don't really know what it's going to be like. Kind of a new experience for me.
They will convulse a bit. They will have a sort of like final hurrah, and that's okay, and that's normal.
There are about 12 adults here with Calvin. They each pick a chicken.
Is that a rooster or a hen?
That's a rooster.
Many of them cradle it for a while.
I hold them in close to the body like this, and it keeps them from flapping their wings all around and, maybe hurting themselves.
Death for Food founder Jamie Fritsch guides the group through the slaughter process. The chicken is placed upside down in a metal cone. Fritsch says it's important to hold the chicken's head up after the cut.
You hold it up so that the blood goes from the brain first. So that way it can just lose consciousness. It's still alive for a few more seconds, but at least it's not feeling anything.
He uses a surgical scalpel and makes cuts on both sides of the chicken's throat, hitting the major arteries. Fritsch says the form of traditional chicken bloodletting that he teaches is the most humane way to kill the animal.
And they lose consciousness. It should be if you're doing it right, it should be in a couple seconds. And by a couple, I mean 2, 3 seconds. And then the chicken should be dead within, another 10 seconds. But they only experience that first cut.
One by one, others go through the process, including young Calvin Berkeley.
Because you're going to cut right in there.
They learn how to remove the feathers.
Keep going. All the way. This plucker is really strong.
And they learn how to eviscerate the chicken.
Use the flat part of the blade. There you go. Okay, that's good. That's good.
Fritsch started Death for Food because he was struggling with eating meat. He came to terms with it when a farmer showed him how to humanely slaughter a chicken.
And I think, too, just there was a relief in owning up to it, or beginning to own up to the death that was taking place on my behalf, the killing that was taking place for me to eat.
Troy Johnson is a food writer. He contributes to the Death for Food website. He says people are disconnected from the food chain, and that's a problem.
The fact that we go into a grocery store and we buy under perfect cellophane these glistening whoopee cushions of meat, it just makes it a product. It's like a widget. It's like buying an iPod. It's no different. So there's no emotional connection to our food system. And I think there's just something perverse about that.
Johnson says ever since he slaughtered a quail for dinner at another Death for Food event, it's changed the amount of meat he eats.
I'm pretty much a vegetarian until sundown almost.
Not surprisingly, animal rights activists and vegans are not fans of this project. Susie's Farm was going to co-host a Death for Food dinner and demonstration this past weekend. They received this phone message from a man who didn't leave his name. This is an excerpt. He warns Susie's they won't even be able to sell beets at a profit if they go through with the dinner.
This is going to come out so big that you'll be able to sell beets at a profit. Will be a miracle. You guys are f***ing disgusting. And now the world is going to know.
An online petition to cancel the event got over 2,000 signatures. Days later, Susie's Farm pulled out. Drew Deckman is a slow food chef who owns a restaurant in Baja, California. He says Death for Food proponents and animal rights activists both believe in respecting animals.
And the interesting part about what they do and what we do, because we feel exactly the same way about how an animal should be taken care of, how an animal should be fed. There's one key difference, is we eat them, and they don't.
You're going to do the same thing on the other side.
Okay.
By the end of the day, Calvin Berkeley had harvested his first chicken.
Man, my new shoes are all covered in blood.
He did it mostly himself. Fritsch did help him use the scalpel on the chicken's neck. Here's how Calvin described the day.
It felt a little hard, like at some points, and then a little easy. And it was my first time, so I'm not used to all the blood and stuff, so.
Bring that up a little bit more.
But he says mostly it was no big deal, and he learned about all the parts inside the chicken.
The liver, the gizzard, the heart. I'll get you a little bag.
Jamie Fritsch says he has one main goal at these demonstrations.
I want people to be able to experience what's real, what actually needs to happen to get food, and then integrate that as they will.
Death for Food plans to hold more demonstrations, but because of the backlash from animal rights advocates, those events won't be widely advertised. Angela Carone, KPBS News.
I'm Judy Woodruff. On the next news hour, we trek to Alaska to profile scientists on the front line to understand climate change. That's Monday on the PBS NewsHour.
A Ventura County judge has freed a man who spent 36 years in prison for a murder he did not commit. Michael Handline was released today. He's the man in the middle of this photo. His case was one of the first handled by the Innocence Project at San Diego's California Western School of Law. The school says he was the longest serving wrongfully incarcerated inmate in California history. A local university is the first in the country to offer a college scholarship for survivors of human trafficking. Peggy Pico finds out more about the program and why it's needed.
Point Loma Nazarene University's Center for Justice and Reconciliation is raising money for a first-of-its-kind college scholarship for survivors of human trafficking. It's just one way the university is trying to abolish the sex trade industry. Joining me with details are my guest, Professor Jamie Gates, Director of the Center for Justice and Reconciliation at Point Loma Nazarene University, and Charisma de los Reyes, a social worker with victims of human trafficking. Welcome to Evening Edition.
Great to be with you, Peggy.
Now, Jamie, the FBI has identified San Diego as one of the highest child prostitution areas in the country. What's the scope of human trafficking here?
Well, that's certainly nothing to celebrate, but it is also the million-dollar question right now. A lot of people are working hard to measure that. What we do know is that the illicit sex trade is worth about $97 million, according to an Urban Institute study last year. What we don't know yet is what that footprint looks like, and that's what we're working on.
But you work directly with these victims, survivors, I should say, Charisma. Can you give us an idea, especially of the children, what the victims are like here in our area?
So it's the most vulnerable children who are disconnected from their families, disconnected from their communities. They are runaway youth, homeless youth, throwaway youth. And so it is very easy to prey on them, for exploiters and traffickers to prey on them.
What age range are we looking at?
So we are matching the national figures or averages of 12 to 14 for girls and 11 to 13 for boys.
How do people get out of this?
One of the biggest ways really is turning the tide against the stigma that these children often endure. The belief that they are making a choice to participate in this type of criminal activity when there certainly is manipulation, force, coercion, and, you know, I totally lost this.
It's okay. We can keep going on this because, I mean, basically we're looking at a young, vulnerable population.
Yes.
And Jamie, you look at this quite a bit. You study this, you research this. Tell us a little bit about this scholarship, Beauty for Ashes, and how it's helping these young victims that aren't college age ultimately get out of human trafficking.
That's right. Well, we're working with 15 different social service agencies around the county in Southern California here, and they are all working to help those who are younger mature, finish their GED, get ready for high school. Maybe they have already completed a year or two in community college. Those that are then ready coming for a 4-year college is who we're trying to support here. We thought it'd be a few people, 3 or 4 in the next 2 or 3 years, but as we polled those 15 organizations, there are upwards of 2 dozen students who in the next year to 3 may be ready. I know San Diego doesn't want to hear that the population is as large as that, but it's worth stepping in and doing something about it.
Trying to help them get out
absolutely.
of it. And when it comes to trying to change somebody's life who has been in this Charisma, what kind of support does a survivor of human trafficking need as they head into college? Certainly they're not your average freshman.
Right. So the mental health services are really important, as well as behavioral health. And the child, the survivor, really needs to be looked at as a whole person. And so education as part of it is really just part of that continuum of care to reach their fullest potential. But certainly mentorships, life skills, housing, some of like the very basic needs. But it doesn't only start with just the crisis intervention or short term. It really needs to be carried over the long term.
And is that something, Jamie, that this is a $40,000 a year scholarship or $40,000 scholarship? Is that something that the money will be spent for, this support?
So let me just clarify, the $40,000 is our initial target to raise in these days. The students will come to us with many of their own scholarshiping. They may be from San Diego, they're from California, they might have Cal Grant, they have internal scholarshiping and so on. But the monies will go towards scholarshiping them, and the university already has the services and the support services in place. We have many students that already come to us and they have sexual abuse in their background, or they're coming back as military students and they have PTSD, heavy PTSD. So all of those supports are in place at a loving place like Point Loma already.
And you actually have, I understand, 3 applicants in place. And when could the scholarship...
In application process.
In the application process, I should say that. Yes, we don't give anybody...
That's
okay.
Right.
How soon could these students or the winner of the scholarship start attending?
So the more people step up to help us fuel this scholarship, the more students will be able to help with this. And we will be able to, with this $40,000, we'll be able to start in the fall of 2015, this coming fall.
Oh, right. And this is basically like a crowdsourcing, a crowdfunding.
We're doing
correct?
it on Indiegogo right now. People
Okay.
can help on Indiegogo. We're hoping that San Diegans will think about donating in somebody they love this holiday season in their name. You know?
All right, Professor Jamie Gates and Charisma de los Reyes, thank you so much.
Peggy, thank you.
You probably felt the weather out there, under a bit of a red flag warning today and a high wind warning with low humidity. It's going to be in the area until Wednesday, this Thanksgiving Day week. Now, gusty winds should weaken afterward, but east to northeast winds are expected to continue into the Thanksgiving Day morning. Mix of sun and clouds along the coast, in the upper 70s there. About the same inland in the valleys. Expect temperatures in the 80s. And sunny and cool in the mountains, where it will warm up to the 70s by Thursday. Clouds and sun also expected out in the desert, 70s for the next few days, low 80s on Thanksgiving Day. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks very much for joining us. Have a great evening.